Hey everyone, it's Carrie. Welcome to Gender Mix. I am kind of a bit of a sweaty mess right now because I just finished my workout, which is great, but I don't have any water, and I didn't know I wasn't going to have any water. I'm assuming it's because there's some construction going on a street that intersects right with mine, but they didn't notify me that I was going to have water. This water is from like my pitcher of water that I couldn't refill. So, I was supposed to get a haircut yesterday, but their booking thing didn't work correctly online, which I always use and it's always fine, and I got there and there were other people booked, and so I had to reschedule for next week. So this is what I look like today. I'm sorry. That's okay, it's fine. But I wanted to talk to you about community, like as trans, genderqueer, non-binary, not cis, queer people. I don't like the term queer, whatever term you like to use for yourself. I really wanted to talk about this week. Well, I am recording this early because my quarter started up for grad school, and my internship site, I'm back there last week I was back there, and it's busy, so I have to kind of plan for these things on my one day off to get them done so you can see them and I can stay on track with that goal, with my fitness goal, which is just basically to look good in a tank top. Sun's out, guns out this summer. It's super superficial. That's fine, I don't care. That's just my goal this summer because I'll be done with school and I will have a brief window with almost no responsibility, assuming I found a job. Back to community. So I mention a lot that I have a really great community locally, and I do. But how the heck did I find it? So I want to talk to you about finding community in two places, online and offline. So online, you're watching this YouTube video, I'm going to presume that you have some concept of how to find information and people online that you can consider your community. I know I have some YouTubers I like to watch who are either trans or genderqueer or non-binary who I follow, and so they talk about very relatable things or just funny things or experiences that cis people wouldn't necessarily have, and they might not even be something that have happened to me, or it's happened to me and I didn't think about it as being a trans related thing until someone else talks about it that way. But it's just kind of it normalizes your experience. And of course, there are at least dozens, if not more, Facebook groups for MTF, FTM, genderqueer, non-binary. Pick your label, you can probably find a Facebook group to join that is a community of those people who will answer questions and usually, generally, hopefully be supportive. And of course, Instagram, Tumblr, any of those social medias, you can look in tags, again, for those identities and find people to follow and talk to and ask questions and share stories with. You can put your own story online. You can cultivate your own online community. But for myself, because I'm such an extrovert, I need to have that in-person interaction pretty regular basis. I can't sit home by myself all day and not talk to a person and not feel really weird about it unless I'm super sick, which only happens every few years. I need to talk to people. That's just me. I actually didn't set out saying oh, it's important that I find this community, because I kind of already had people that were in the community that I was friends with or knew, because I'm older and I know a lot of people from a lot of things. For example, my very best friend in the whole world, I'll just say they are queer identified to make it simple. And that's something we have in common and we can talk about, and we do talk about a lot, and we share that, and we share a lot of other things. And honestly, if I had that one person, because of the nature of that relationship, which is phenomenal, that would probably be enough for me, because I'm also as much as I'm an extrovert, I'm pretty self-sufficient. I'm not, there's not a way to say it without making me sound a bit like a sociopath, but I'm not super emotional kind of person, so I don't need a lot of that. I just need somebody who kind of gets it, so I have that with them. But I also already had some friends who were somehow trans-identified or had interacted in this community. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about how these groups developed and how you can do this if you don't have it. Because I get it. I get if you are geographically located in a place where you're there are no people like me in this area. You might be wrong. You might be right. I mean, the town I grew up in isn't a town. It's a village. It is too small to be a town. It is still a village to this day. So I get feeling man, it's just a limited number of people, so statistically it's unlikely that there are other people that share my identity, especially when it's a genderqueer, non-binary identity a lot of people still haven't heard of. This is just going to be a long video, I'm sorry, I just looked at the time. So first of all, I have a friend his friend is trans, and when I came out to him, he unhelpfully was like, yeah, I kind of thought you always were like on this like gender spectrum, and I was like, thanks for letting me know, buddy, it was super helpful. No, but he asked if I had looked into any of the local like support groups, and I said, well, I had like looked them up, but I wasn't in a place where I needed like those emotional support groups. Like I said, like that's not who I am, and I'm not talking smack about those groups. Like they're very important, they're useful, they're helpful, I believe in them. So if it's something you want, like they're great places, you can meet people there, like you can develop good friendships out of them. I'm not against them. It just wasn't something that I felt I needed as a resource. But through this conversation, he had had a similar conversation with a friend of his who is a trans woman, and their conversation was kind of the similar. They both had transitioned years ago, so they've been like out and passing and whatnot forever, relatively speaking. So they didn't necessarily need that emotional type support group. They just kind of, it's nice to be around people who just kind of get it. So out of that, those conversations, they started like a social group of people that meet maybe once every other month. And we just go to a like local club bar, and you don't have to drink, you can just go and like have water, soda, or whatever, it's fine, and hang out and like catch up and talk about life in general. And trans stuff absolutely comes up in those conversations, because people are like maybe talking about surgeries or something that happened like with a medical professional, or asking for advice, but also people are just talking about like their pets or their day at work or just normal things. And it's a very great experience to be able to have normal conversation, but if something trans related is part of that, it's just a very normalized situation. And I do know there are a couple people, I think just a couple, that I know go to those groups that are stealth. So for them, it's kind of a different type of outlet where they don't have to be worried about hiding a part of themselves, because when they're in that space, everyone already knows that they're probably somewhere on this gender spectrum. And there are cis people who come to that who are partners of some of the trans people. Hopefully that makes sense. And that group actually has been really amazing, and I've made a couple other friends out of it, and several like acquaintances who will probably become friends as I like interact with them more. And that came, like, you could easily, if you were in a Facebook group, say like, hey, I'm in this part of this state, are there other people, can we get together a couple times a year, even if there's some travel involved. And I think there's some value in that, again, especially if you're like me and you're an extrovert and you need that like personal, I want to have a conversation with you in person kind of interaction. And I'm going to go back to like the support groups. So I live in Columbus, Ohio, and we have Stonewall Columbus, and lots of other cities have Stonewall organizations, or if they're not called Stonewall, they will have some type of LGBT support, usually politically active organizations. Look them up. If you're anywhere near a city, look for those, because A, they are going to have resources. They're going to be able to help you find therapists and doctors and things a lot of times. They'll have support groups. They'll have groups for like parents and families, like P-Flag. They are great resources if you are fortunate enough to live in a geographic area that has them. But again, don't let the fact that you don't live in like a highly populated area make you feel like you can't find that community. You might have to be a little bit creative in how you look for that community. Like I said, like posting in your Facebook group, like, hey, I live in the state. Like if I tell you I live in Ohio, you might be surprised to know I work at a very culturally diverse high school that's like pretty great with trans kids and has kids of all nationalities, and that I've got all of these great resources, and it's like I have a trans like social group I meet up with, and I feel safe like being trans and talking about being trans because of where I live in Ohio. I'm the person that travels for different things or just for fun and ends up in like small rural communities, like in a winery or brewery, and accidentally kind of loudly talks about being trans or being queer or not liking Trump. And then I like kind of do that like check around, like, oh, I should tone this down because I'm not in my usual safe space. So I don't want like you to think that I'm saying that that's not a real concern, because I get that it is a concern. I get it. But I think you can make it happen. Oh, and if you are a high school student, or if you work in a high school, like GSAs are a great resource. And I didn't realize this. Like, I had to really read someone else talk about like the term ally, which I've never been a fan of, until someone said that allows closeted people, especially teens, to be active in those groups without outing themselves. Whether it's safety, parents, they're just not ready to because everyone works on their own timeline. And I said, oh, that's actually really brilliant. And so now I'm kind of, well, definitely like okay with that, especially in those settings. So yeah, like GSA groups are free to set up. GLSEN, GLSEN has resources online available to you if you're interested in that. Look for people, build your community. Yeah, I knew this was going to be a long video because it's a lot. But I think, like I said, it's important and it normalizes it. Like, being able to be in situations where I can just talk about whatever and I can mention, I don't know, hormones or top surgery, or my friend can say, like, came back from her bottom surgery and, like, ask us all if we want to see pictures, and you feel bad that you don't want to see pictures because you can see how excited she is. And, like, it's kind of relatable, like, because, like, it is exciting. Like, that has made my like transition experience, I think, so much better than it would have been. And I don't think it would have been terrible without it. I just know that it made it better. Like, having those people make it better. And knowing that those people exist and that there are so many people that really are. There are so many people who have been through similar things and who deal with the same crap that you have to deal with sometimes. And who, they're just living their lives how they want to. And it's amazing. So that's it. That's my talking about finding community. And if you have questions or want more resources or names of organizations, you can leave a comment. Of course, like, leave a comment anyways, like, how have you found your community, what have you found helpful, or maybe you've tried and it didn't work but you would have done differently. Do like the subscription, follow my social media, I'll put my Instagram down there, all that good stuff. I don't know, have a great week.